About 5 or 6 women are in the room, and I walk into a discussion already in progress.
Welcome to the Unitarian Christian Alliance Podcast, episode 34. My Homeschooling Nail-Biter. The Conclusion, Part 2, with my guest, Amanda Dunn. I'm Mark Kane. If you missed Part 1, you owe it to yourself to stop now and go back. It's episode 33, My Trinitarian Best Friend. Oh, and if you can stand to hold off on this episode even longer, and I would understand entirely if you can't wait another moment, and in fact are already irritated that I'm still talking, you might want to check out episode 6, Working at the Colson Center, with Anna Brown. That was a rip-roaringly fun good time. It comes up in this episode, but honestly, you can catch up on it later. Let's just say that Anna and Amanda will likely have a good talk one day. Nail biting is biting on one's fingernails. It's sometimes done when a person is in a state of tension or anxiety. It can be a sign of nervousness. A nail biter is a situation in which that tension is present. Such is the case today. This story wasn't just a nail biter for Amanda. It was for me, just listening. Today we're going to go a different direction, somewhat different. I mean, it's still in the same theological awkwardness direction. But
Oh, I have lots of theological awkwardness, Mark.
yes. Well, I'm just terribly excited to hear it. So, when does this story pick up?
Okay. When we moved back to Idaho Falls, I had been homeschooling my kids for the most part. I reached out to a local group called Classical Conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They're international, but they have like local chapters. And we got involved. The first year, it was just one of my sons. And then the next year, all my kids were involved at Classical Conversations. And it's kind of a parent cooperative. We're all studying a lot of the same material. It's a classical format. And certain parents volunteer to be the teachers. And those people are my favorite people because I don't want to be the teacher. It's a lot of work. So I had never been involved with the Classical Conversations community before. And one of those reasons is that you have to sign a statement of faith. And so we know as Biblical Unitarians that can very often be a hurdle that's difficult to cross.
Yeah.
When I asked for information and got all the paperwork here from a wonderful gal who's now a good friend of mine, I was so delighted to see that they had written their constitution, is what they called it, in a very generous way that allowed me to sign and acknowledge this was the official set of beliefs for this organization and agree to respect it without saying that I believe in it. So this was new to me, and I was very excited. Part of the reason they wrote it that way is that this area does have a very high LDS population, and they didn't want to necessarily preclude Mormons from participating on campus.
Okay.
It did not occur to them that there might be a Biblical Unitarian that wasn't a Mormon.
In their mind, would there be much of a difference between a Biblical Unitarian and a Mormon? Isn't wrong?
In fact, it's the same. So in my hometown, if you say, I don't believe in the Trinity, the next thing someone will say is, oh, you're a Mormon. Those are the only two options. So It complicates things a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people have preconceived notions, it makes it harder to explain what you actually believe. So anyway, we got involved in this campus.
I have a question about homeschool in general. I know that faith communities and homeschooling go together very closely. That's very common. Is it universal almost? I have yet to stumble into a homeschooling community that didn't have at least some level of a faith underpinning.
Yeah, it is predominant. I would say when we lived in California, there was certainly more of a presence of non-faith-based homeschoolers and homeschooling groups.
Okay.
Here, If there are non-faith-based groups, I don't know of them.
Interesting.
But very often there are statements of faith to sign, and I've navigated that in the past and had different levels of reactions. But like I said, the way that they wrote their constitution, I really thought this is very generous and there's humility in this, and I appreciate that.
One more question.
Yes.
Somebody who's maybe missed out on the whole homeschooling thing might actually think it all happens literally in your home. But you keep talking about these groups and teachers. Obviously, the word homeschooling isn't exactly what's happening.
Right. Oh, good point. So, first of all, I would say that I am the homeschool mom least likely to be found at home schooling my children. Pretty much anything we can do outside or somewhere else, that's how we like to school.
Okay.
Most of my children are very extroverted, like I am. One is not. So there's that. But we do like to be involved with other groups. And contrary to the stereotypes, most homeschooled kids are not antisocial weirdos. They actually have lots of friends and make really funny jokes. So that's what I think of my own kids anyway.
So like your kids, I mean, typically how many kids are they around or interact with as a part of this group?
So the way Classical Conversations works is we meet once a week for 24 weeks at the elementary level.
Okay.
They group kids into general age groups, not necessarily by grade. And so there could be anywhere between 4 or 5 up to 10, I think is usually the cap in a classroom. And then a handful of parents volunteer to be tutors. And they use the term tutor intentionally because they aren't trying to take the place of the parent as the teacher, although that wouldn't actually offend me at all because I am not an overachiever homeschool mom. Okay.
Okay.
But the tutors, they lead that meeting with these kids one day a week. It's one morning a week. They present all the new material. They model a way of learning to both the parents and the kids. It's very whole family oriented. So it is not like a drop-off program. Although I might not be tutoring a class, I am expected to be in the classrooms with my children all day long and to be very involved.
Interesting.
Yes.
Like, is there a set location, like a church that has donated rooms?
Yeah, they rent space from a local church, and it's actually that same local church where the pastor didn't like my views very much.
Right. Yeah, we talked about before.
And a lot of the same people that go to that church do Classical Conversations, but not all. There's a variety of families. In our area, families drive from up to 3 hours away to meet once a week. So it's a big investment.
Really? Okay, so they're working independently the other days, but they will drive in. Oh, man.
Yes, so 3 or 4 days a week, we school at home and independently. And then one day a week, we meet for community day.
Okay.
And we learn all our new material together.
Wow.
And I actually happen to know that there are other UCA members who homeschool who are involved in Classical Conversations.
We'll leave that as an exercise for the listener to figure out who they are.
Yes. Is your curiosity piqued?
All right. I appreciate you taking a moment to discuss that.
Sure.
It helps me to picture what you're talking about. To a completely naive person, I homeschool means I sit at home with my kids and I rent some books from the library and I teach them things.
Or we board up the windows to make sure that no one ever gets to our children to corrupt them with the evil world.
Which, of course, is what everybody should do.
Yes. But again, I'm an underachieving homeschool mom.
So your windows still work.
They still work. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So what happened?
Okay. So we've been involved in Classical Conversations for a couple of years, and we've grown into really close relationships with some of these families and just like endearing relationships with everyone because it's a bonding experience trying to raise and educate children together. It's kind of like being in the trenches together. We love each other. We rely on each other. Just last year, one of the only homeschool dads that's involved in our community, came and found me and another mom holding a son of mine and a son of hers by their hands. And he's like, we had a fist fight. So everyone's so involved and so kind and not judgy. And it's so wonderful.
Wow.
Okay. So we've been involved for a couple years now. And I have been a very willing tutor assistant volunteer in that time. I have not offered to tutor. And I would say that our community is small enough that there's sort of an expectation that if you've been in a couple years, really, it's probably time to step up and offer to be a tutor.
You called yourself a tutor assistant?
Yes, that is an unofficial position where I'm a parent in the room and I sit next to the noisy kid, or I wash the paint out of the bowls, or I sing extra enthusiastically if no other kids want to sing along.
Kind of a chaperone. You're just there as an extra set of eyes.
Yes,
okay.
That was me.
Okay.
So although the Constitution was written very generously, I was fairly sure that my biblical Unitarian faith may well become an issue if I were to volunteer to be involved as a tutor or anything further. Because these are people who are very strong in their convictions, including about the Trinity. So each year, the director, who's the leader of the campus, comes and does a family interview, find out where you are. There was a new director who I didn't know, but I've really wanted to get to know. Her name is Jennifer. She is so cool. I love this lady. She's like all the things I'm really not. She seems to me at least to be very organized. She's like 5'10", gorgeous. Her kids are awesome. Their hair is always combed. I love her. She's just really cool.
Are you saying those are all the things that you're not?
I mean, a lot of days. I'm actually, in fact, never tall. That's never true. So she was coming over and we got to the paperwork part and she said, okay, there's something new this year. I actually have to read our statement of faith aloud and I need you to verbally agree. And my heart dropped. I said, well, I already know I don't agree. And she said, oh, what? Is it the homosexuality part? I said, no, it's not. She said, let me just read it aloud and then we'll talk. So she read it aloud and then I very briefly and as diplomatically as possible explained my position on the Trinity. She stared at me for a minute and said, well, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. So that was it. We signed the paperwork and we got all done. And then at the end of our, go ahead.
Wait, so you didn't verbally agree, but she just let you sign the paper anyway. Is that how that worked out?
Here's what I would say. I think that after I ventured into explaining, I mean, in 2 sentences or less, what I believe, she thought, the Trinity is full of complicated words that none of us understand. And if Amanda wants to use different words, okay. She did tell me that our family is valued in the community and they really want us to be a part of it. And I emphasized that I understand that this is the prevailing belief of this group and that my children understand that. And we're not there to cause distraction or disruption from the education at hand.
Okay.
That it's really a non-issue when we're all just trying to memorize all the presidents together, right?
Right.
So we got all done and she said, have you thought about being a tutor? And I said, well, no, because, whole Biblical Unitarian issue. And she said, well, we're really, really in need of tutors this year. So maybe think about it and I'll think about it. Let's both pray and let's see if he leads us in any particular direction. So we did. We both prayed for a couple weeks and then she called me back. I will tell you here in the meantime, I discovered the UCA podcast with Mark Kane.
Well,
And it was such a delight and so exciting. And I couldn't stop listening and cleaning because that's how I justify listening.
yes.
In that time frame, I listened to Anna Brown's awesome story.
Mm.
And I loved all of her story, but I laughed particularly hard and even retold like 3 times the part where you guys joke about like Anna envisioning going into work and her boss totally ridiculously walking in with a statement of faith in front of everyone and asking her to affirm it right now. And how unrealistic is this? And I said, yes, why do I live with this fear? This is completely unrealistic. And I really appreciated it because it was funny and true so far. So after a couple weeks of prayer, both Jennifer and I felt like, you know what? Let's pursue this tutor thing. Let's just see if we can make it work.
Okay.
So there's a mandatory day of training. I had not signed any additional paperwork. Nothing else had been said of the statement of faith up to this point. I show up to training that day, and it was a sad day for me. I was in the process of losing my dog, who was like my best friend. And it was just, I was emotionally very fragile. I wanted to like wear a shirt. Do you ever want to wear a shirt that's like, I'm very fragile today? Probably my husband would like it if I would wear that. And then he would know like, oh,
right. Oh,
don't make a funny joke today. She won't think it's funny. I just felt a little beat up, and it had just been a long process. Everything's okay, but I'm sad. I'm feeling easily breakable. So I go to training, and the morning is spent as a large group discussing several things. And one of the things that was discussed was, what is humility functionally in community? What does humility look like?
okay.
And there was some back and forth, and I thought about it for a while and eventually shared, well, I think that what God is teaching me is that humility is understanding that I am a very valuable piece of a much greater whole. And so maybe I need to spend a lot more time asking what I can give to that whole than what that whole can give to me. The leader of the discussion was like, I love this, which prompted several of the women to be like, you know what? We just want to say to you that we were praying that you would decide to tutor because we look at your family and their faith and we just see such a sincere Christian walk and we just love you and respect you, which was really kind. But I'm also like, but you don't know the whole truth.
Yeah.
So after lunch, we break and we come back, and my good friend Kim is leading a smaller training.
Okay.
Before the training starts formally, about 5 or 6 women are in the room, and I walk into a discussion already in progress. I sit down and I hear a lady say from across the table, well, yes, she was going to be a part of our campus and she was going to be a tutor. But in the end, she didn't agree to the statement of faith. So she couldn't be a tutor. And then she didn't want to be a part of our campus. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I look at my friend Kim, who kind of knows. She doesn't know the whole story, but she knows. She knows there's something for me here.
Yeah.
And I say, I thought the Constitution just says that you accept it and that you can respect it. And she pats my hand and she says, yes, it does. Shh.
So Kim is talking you down.
Kim's like, please don't say anything. My friend Jennifer, the director, looks over at me, kind of like also starting to panic.
Oh.
I take a breath and I think, okay, these women that are speaking aren't the leaders, so I'll just let this conversation finish out. But it progresses, and pretty soon this person says, well, here's the thing. That woman didn't even believe that hell is a real place. And if she doesn't believe the Bible's truth about hell, that's not even something important like the Trinity. If she can't even believe the Bible about something like hell, I do not want her teaching my children. And several women agree.
Oh.
And Mark, my heart stops. Like, this is the moment that you and Anna told me would never happen.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry.
And I hold you personally responsible. I just want you to know.
Okay. Well, just a second. I'm texting Anna right now. Anna, you blew it.
Oh, for a moment, I didn't know what to do. And I just want to emphasize, these aren't women that, like, I don't know. This isn't a conference. This isn't just a large population at church. These are the women who I have toiled alongside. I really care about them. Our kids play together. We have sleepovers. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
And up to this point, I mean, sometimes I thought, when I navigate these things, is it wrong of me not to be like bold and outright at all times? But this isn't a matter of that anymore. This is a matter of, if I say nothing now, I'm a liar. So I prayed. And as quietly as I could to Jennifer, I said, "Hey, Jennifer, I think we have to talk." And she is mortified. And my friend Kim's face just falls, like melts. And everyone heard me, even though I tried to be quiet, and the whole room just falls silent. So I kind of like pick up my things, and they all know that this is, I must dissent about something. And I look at them and I said something like, "I'm sure everything will work out, and I just want you guys to know that I love you." And we walk out of the room and we go into another classroom. And I have to tell you, Jennifer's first response is apology and mortification that this has happened. She said, "I just don't know how this happened, because I prayed and asked God, and you prayed and asked God, and we both felt led." And I agree with her. I said, "Yes, I did too. And I'm just mortified because the last thing I wanted to do was cause a distraction today in my friend Kim's training class that was going to upset a bunch of people and possibly jeopardize the relationships I have with them and the friendships that my children have with their children. This was a major fear come true. What are the odds that someone would say what that woman said?" And that woman, by the way, can I also just say that I really like her? So we navigate for a minute. Jennifer says, "Well, just explain to me." She lays the statement of faith out on the table, and she says, "Explain to me what it is you don't believe, because I just want you to be in our community so bad." And I said, "Well, I have to tell you something. Previously, I was so fixated on you getting mad at me about the Trinity that I completely didn't even hear you read the thing about hell. And I don't actually believe in hell." And I know that, like, not even all biblical Unitarians agree on this.
Yeah.
But this is just my faith. This is what I believe.
Yeah.
So.
And by don't believe in hell, you mean don't believe in the eternal torment version of hell.
Let's get technical. I'm an annihilationist.
Okay.
Honestly, I feel like that sounds annihilation. Like that's scary too. If we're worried that people won't be motivated, I feel like that's motivation. Okay. I mean, whatever. I don't want to be there either way, right?
Fair enough.
So, and I tell her that. I say, "Look, this is not a big deal. This is not a big deal." And she said, "I'm so frustrated because I just can't see that this would ever come up, any of it, or matter, or be relevant in a foundations level class. I don't see this, and I'm so frustrated that this is the rule." I'm going to go talk to some people. So she leaves the room and she went and talked to a couple other people, and she came back about 5 minutes later. And by this time, like, I am sweating, Mark,
Oh.
like my face is sweating. My hair is sticking to my neck. I'm trembling a little bit. And also, like, I'm really wishing I would have worn the Fragile shirt because
Your dog.
not today, you know?
Yes. Well, you came here fearing that you would not find a group of people that you could stay connected with. And this was that group, right?
Yes.
This was it.
Yes, you're right. And here it comes, the blow. And I felt, if I'm honest, I felt a little frustrated with God because I had prayed and I did feel led. And I thought that meant that it was going to work out. And I don't know why I thought that's what that meant.
Yeah.
But it didn't. Jennifer came back in the room with tears in her eyes. And she said, I'm so sorry. It's not going to work. And I said, okay. Then she looks at me and says, oh, we still have to tell all those women in that room. And I wanted to say, we? I'm not going back in there.
Yeah.
But actually, I had forgotten my water bottle in there. My mouth was really dry, so I had to go back.
Yeah.
So we walked back in, and my friend Kim, they had progressed into their training the best they could. Clearly, everyone is on edge. Everything stops when I walk in the room. And I walk over to the table to gather up my things. And the whole time I'm just praying because I am feeling this, a reopening of a wound that I just never wanted to go there again. I had had this beautiful community in San Diego. I kind of felt like we could have stayed there and this would not have happened. And why is this happening? Why am I doing this again?
Mm.
And I genuinely believe that God gave me the words because the words that came out of my mouth were not what I wanted to say. There was a statement of faith laying on the table, and I put my hand on it. And I said, hey, gals, it looks like it's just not going to work out. And I'm sure that by now you've put together that it's that I disagree about some of the stuff on this paper. But I hope that you can hear me when I tell you that this has absolutely nothing to do with me thinking that I'm so right and that you are so wrong. This has to do with a very sincere faith and a love for you that compels me to be honest about it. I was crying. My friend Kim was crying. Kim grabbed my hand and said, please promise me you'll still come back. I was waiting to be cast out. I was waiting for them to yell heretic. I was waiting for that. And her first response was, please still be in our community. And that's not something that I believed was possible here. The next person to speak was the woman who had made the statement.
Oh.
And she said, Amanda, what you just said and did is one of the greatest examples of humility I've ever seen in my life. And I can tell you, Mark, that humility was not mine. That's not what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But God was there. He was there. And I left. I walked out of the training. I got to the car. My hands were shaking. I called my mom. That's who you call, right? I called my mom.
Yeah.
And she was mad. She was mad for me. She was mad that I'd been kicked out again because she's watched me do this my whole life. I feel like the rest of my family doesn't do this. They think I'm crazy. I got a call a couple hours later, about 2 minutes after the training had ended for the day, from Jennifer. And she said the most incredible thing to me. She said, you know, Amanda, I'm so sad that it's not going to work out. And I'm so sorry that you're not going to be a tutor. But I watched you stand up for something you believe in today. And if you don't mind, could we go to coffee sometime? And maybe you could tell me a little bit more about what you believe.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that she wants me to change your mind.
Yeah.
But how different is that response than the one that so many of us have gotten dozens of times in our life? In the next couple of days, a couple other people reached out and said the same thing.
Oh, man.
My mind is blown because, I told you before in our previous discussion that I was going to let people know how wrong they were and how right I was.
Yeah.
And look how God works. So that's the story. And I hold you and Anna personally responsible for all of the sweat and all of the sticky hair. But I'm also super thankful because I don't know if I hadn't had that boost and if I hadn't had this infusion of listening to the stories, not just of Unitarians who'd grown up in that faith, but also of Hildy and other people who came to this understanding, to learn to see them as Hildy was a sincere and wonderful woman and lover of the Word of God before she ever became a biblical Unitarian.
Yeah.
And I needed to understand that deeper.
What is the status with this group then? Can you even be a mom chaperone?
Yes. I will retain my unpaid position as rotating mom volunteer.
Okay.
Which I am very excited about.
That was more up your alley.
It was more up my alley. I make a good cheerleader, I feel like. I love to be like, you've got this.
Yeah.
I believe in you. I'll go wash the watercolors. I do that well.
Good.
Yeah. So that's it. And our status is that we're still going to participate in the community this year.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that desire to be a part of a group. That's what we are as humans. If we don't have fellowship, we deteriorate internally.
Yes.
And I didn't know the end of the story when we started our conversation today. I was afraid that you were now back alone again.
I was afraid too in the moment.
Yeah.
But God is showing me that the past is not the future, and that mine is not the only heart he's working in. And that there is a way to be strong in my faith and tender in my relationships.
Mm.
And isn't that exactly what Jesus was for us? Is for us?
Yeah.
I think I'm learning that God can find places for me to belong without me fitting in. It's not one and the same.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Like, we want to think like we're like all these round pegs that need to be put into the hole, but we're really like puzzle pieces with rough and jagged and random edges, but we do fit together.
Mm.
Maybe not where we would choose. If I'm honest, I wouldn't have chosen to be here.
Yeah.
I want to move where all these other UCA members live, where they have these churches they go to and everybody believes that Jesus is the Son of God. I mean, that's so cool. I've never experienced that in my life. That's super cool.
Yeah. But God's worked it out.
Yeah.
And, thank goodness for technology. I mean, you can connect, and we just did.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people now that will feel like they know you before you ever see them. I'm just telling you. It's how this works. And you'll get some hugs.
Oh, I would love some hugs.
Yeah. What an amazing story. It's about living and trying to cope with this life when you're convicted of something and you can't just shove it to the side in order to be like, well, okay, I just want to have a church fellowship.
Yes.
There's story upon story of us doing the best we can to manage when the easy solution is chuck it. Like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see your point, and boy, is it nice when I just agree with you and we all get together in fellowship and I can sign all of your statements of faith.
Yes.
But there's a portion of us who can't do that. And what do we do? Well, sometimes we have to walk out of a homeschooling meeting. Okay, we're all right. Thank you, Amanda. I hope we get to meet sometime soon.
Me too, Mark. Thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Paul from Georgia writes, Amanda, I enjoyed listening to the interview and hearing your open and honest recounting of your experiences. I'm glad you're discovering that there are more Unitarian unicorns out there to be in community with, even if it's mostly online. We are out there. We're just spread out more than we would like. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that our small group leader opted for the unicorn as the mythological creature. I mean, it's appropriate as it has a distinctly singular, prominent feature. He could have called her a Unitarian Cyclops. That works, too, but I guess I just prefer unicorns. Jackie, my Irish friend from episode 30, Shamrock and Condiments, adds this. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing your heart and experiences on the podcast. You have a kind soul, which comes in handy on the Unitarian path. I agree, Jackie. Thanks. So last Wednesday, when part 1 was released, remember I always release Wednesday mornings, I got this text from Amanda regarding the episode and her friend, Corey. It made my whole day. She wrote, like true best friends, unbeknownst to us, we finished listening to the podcast and texted each other at the very same time. Mark, thank you for sharing this story and doing it so well. And thank you for handling the story of our friendship with such care and respect. I sometimes find it amazing that I'm able to do this and that these kinds of things, these connections and blessings, that they happen. It's humbling. Here's what I think. Find what you love to do, then do it for the right reasons, for our loving Creator and for His King. Then just watch and see what they will do with it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you at the UCA conference October 15 through 17. If you can't make it, I'll miss you. But you can still drop me an email, podcast@UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. Or you can say an encouraging word with your voice. Record yourself and email it to me, or use the record button that's in the notes, or the one that's on the podcast webpage, podcast.UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. Remember to say your first name and where you're from.
Your name and your location doth pin your ethereal voice to the map of reality.
Thank you? That was Wise-Sounding Man from Anna Brown's episode 6. Anyway, just a note, if you're somewhat new to this, Amanda had mentioned the term Biblical Unitarian several times. This is a name used for Unitarian Christians who believe that Jesus began at his birth, and naturally that the Father is the only true God. It's called this mostly to distinguish the view from Unitarian Universalists. I did speak a bit more about Biblical Unitarian back in episode 4, Re-Emergence, with Hildy Chandler. So if you hadn't gone through her story yet, it starts in episode 2. It's a 3-part episode. There are other variations of Unitarian Christians out there. The UCA isn't made up of one variety. For another example, see episode 26, Road Trip and Late Night Christology with Eric Miller. If these episodes with Amanda were especially meaningful to you, consider sharing them. Maybe you know someone like Amanda or Anna Brown from episode 6 who had to face the dreaded signing of the statement of faith. Let them know about Amanda's story. And if, hey, that's you are one of the people listening now because someone told you about it, well, tell them thanks. It's great to have you here. So far, after 1 week, there's been no seismic reaction to the God's Death puppet show. If you had been meaning to see it, here's your reminder. I have checked with my mom, and she has other puppets too. Ooh, the possibilities. I know, right? Isn't it amazing? For now, I'm just hoping some traditional apologist takes a stab at it. But I'll admit, it doesn't lend itself to that. I mean, how exactly do you criticize the veracity of a make-believe story? I'm not sure, but I do hope someone figures out a way. Amanda, thank you for pouring out your heart. It was a good kind of nail-biter. And what a testimony of God's handiwork, grace and truth in action. May God bless you in your truth pursuits. I hope this podcast serves you well. How about we just dig another part of your past up and do a part 3 for...